I don't know about you, but these past couple of days seem just perfect for a big pot of some warming kind of stew. And if you've made some the last few days, I imagine one of the last ingredients you put in was some salt. Yeah, what salt does is make everything taste better. Salt puts the zest, the enjoyment, and the flavors of life. That zest is what makes us desire the experience of nourishment even more. It really tastes good. So the zest is what makes us desire this experience of nourishment. And today Jesus starts out calling the disciples and us the salt of the earth. He doesn't tell us we have to become the salt of the earth. He says we already are and need to become even more zesty in our desire to be like Jesus. Lutheran pastor Brett Davis from Muhlenberg, West Virginia, states this in a really nice way, and I decided to read his piece. Jesus says you are salt. There's no instruction on how to become salty, no regulations or self-acquiring actions, values, or morals, but rather present tense truth-telling that you are it. You are it. There's nothing to be won here. Just be and follow Christ. Follow Christ to the hurting and oppressed places and people. Jesus goes on to tell us that we are the light of the world, too. He says, you are the light of the world. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to the whole house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. This is a direct command from Jesus. You don't see this often. Direct command. So, but what is the point of having a community where the zest of life can be felt by anyone who joins it, but we don't show it to anybody? It's even harder these days to keep that light shining outward. It requires not only zest, and not just an old-fashioned candle shining in the darkness. Today, that light has to burn bright through digital media. That's because today's seekers of spirituality, as they would call it, are holding up alone on their iPhones. I'm sure you've seen all this. And in fact, a colleague of mine, Reverend Tim Richmond from Medford, Oregon, mused that what kind of metaphor Jesus would use today for this group instead of maybe salt. So he said, if Jesus were giving the same sermon today, he might say, you are the electricity of the world, or you are the internet of the earth. Or, if he was talking to teens, you are the smartphones of the world. Salt and light are essential to our well-being. We need both to survive. And, sometimes we're tempted to think of church as a nice thing we do once a week or maybe once a month. We think of the church as something we go to and not something we are. Not something we are. We think of the church as in the same way as we think of other social clubs. But if Jesus is right here, right now, the church is much more. It's something we are, not something we just attend. And it is a very, very important thing for the preservation of the world. And we are called to be a salty church. We are called to be salty people, to live salty. We are called to be the light. To tell you the truth, these past few years have made it really hard to keep our saltiness, our zestiness, from getting a little stale. When we start to lose our zest, our hope for our own community, that's a bad thing indeed. It's hard, of course, to keep our zest when we, like every other house of worship in this town, have had a drop in in-person attendance. So where is this coming from? And this, in part, this departure from church and religion was well underway before the pandemic. It just made everything worse. It's a phenomenon spurred by a couple of generations before the current Gen Zs. Jesus is challenging us to stay salty because when it comes down to it, that's what all people are looking for. They come to feel something wonderful when they come here. And only they don't know what they're looking for. This hit me right in the face the other day, as you probably, if you read my e-tidings, when I got a call from Professor Mary Kate Conroy from Naugatuck Community College right down the hill. And she called me and she said that she had discovered that more than 90% of her students who she polled had never even set foot inside a church, much less attended a service. And so she's going to bring them here in a couple of weeks so they can learn from a church, our church, that has history and there's intrigue and there's certainly zest here. Zest they probably didn't know existed. Today, when every denomination sees many empty spots in the pews, this really should come as no surprise. At least 2 generations of young people have grown up without a place in their weekly routine that involves church or the community of people that gathers there regularly, because that's what church is. It's a community of people. It's not a building. According to Putnam and Campbell, who wrote the seminal book, American Grace, it was back in the mid-70s that parents stopped bringing their children to some kind of worship, or they stopped attending themselves. For every generation that doesn't bring the kids, the next generation, they produce even less incentive to involve their children. Eventually, we reach the point that young adults can't think of any reason they'd want to go into a church, except maybe to see their friends get married and then get quickly to the party and the booze afterwards. But it's our own enthusiasm, our zest, and yes, the fun we generate when we're together that makes church going enjoyable. An enjoyable, desirable thing. But how would someone who'd never been to church know this? The fact is, the way we get more people back into the church community is by reaching out and letting them discover and sample the zest in our incredible music program. And the choir, the music program that's broadcast online draws people to us. That's one way to reach out. And one reason we established the Family Night Out program is to show people who have no concept of what community looks like and feels like, and to come to this church and say, yes, you can find fun and joy and regular people inside that church on that building in the corner that I don't know what goes on in it. We went from, and it has worked. We went from, what was it, Greg, about no more than 8 people the first time we got together to last Friday we gathered was 30 people, and they've come each week and they've formed friendships and groups and teams, and they look forward to that. And that, my friends, is as much of a piece of church as it is to sit here. And hopefully some of them eventually will want to come and be here as well. What has been most rewarding for us, and this is just pure serendipity this week, What's been most rewarding for us are the many invisible people who tune in each week and watch our services on streaming services, or maybe even later. Ironically, this has been a time when they've let us know in this last week. Some people that we know are far away. Hi, Mark Holmes. And Kathy Fawcett, Nairo Butcher, who belonged to this church 30 years ago, but now lives in Wilmington, North Carolina. She wrote this week. She said, First Congregational Church, Danbury, thanks for the update. I am now in Wilmington, North Carolina, but I attended in the mid-1980s when Dewey was pastor. My landlady was Connie Jennings, and through these posts, I reconnected with the children of those I watched grow up. First Congregational Church came at a time when I was stepping away from Catholicism. I watched your live stream. Pat and Jim Moriarty taught in Richfield with me. So long ago and far away, but still connected. That's what happens. And there are more who are even closer nearby who watch this service. There's Tina Heydrich, who told us this week she watches weekly. And then Cindy Horosky in Norwalk, and quite a few other people for whom going out and still in the post-pandemic situation is a little bit of a risky business. There are many more who haven't told us when they're watching, but we're so pleased to have their experience here and their own zest. Finally, it's a challenge to rebuild a community from its bones outward. And yet we cannot hide our light under a basket, because it's from our light that people will come, will support us, will join with us, if only we have the courage, to salt that warm and nourishing stew. A new era is about to begin, one in which, with the help of Bob Vitello, who's going to join us later, and the city of Danbury, we will extend our mission to seniors who will live on premises if plans go according to the way we have planned. And we'll have local grant resources from the city to help us with our work and bring in money for the projects that we have. Isaiah said, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." There is nothing more precious or more needed today than to be that light for a world immersed in darkness. We salty, zesty disciples must trust in God, that if we light the way, God will provide the material things we need to survive. Amen. I wish you zestiness. I wish you a sense of your belonging here as you understand what we do to try to reach out to the community. I send you forth as the salt of the earth. I ask you to exercise your wisdom. I ask you to exercise your compassion, and ask you to exercise your sense of right and wrong. All this week, because that's really what being a salty person really is. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you, whether you're here, whether you're there, wherever you are listening to this. May you hear the voice of God, and may it stir your heart. Amen.